Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article is speaking about the kangaroo coach. We will try and understand what these kangaroo coach are. We will also understand with respect to some of the examples from multiple states what has been the verdict of Supreme Court with respect to these kangaroo coach, and we will also understand what is the way forward when it comes to its operations. First up, we have to understand what are these kangaroo coach. Whenever we speak of court, what do we have? We have the law which has sanctioned it. We have the constitution which gives permission for the judiciary to operate. We have the lower court. We also have the higher court. We also have the Supreme Court of India as well. These are the ones which are mentioned in the constitution. They also have the sanction of law as well. So if it is approved by the sanction of law, what we have is the judiciary. So extrajudicial which are not given permission by the law, and these are the courts which do not look up to the practices of law. They do not look at justice, but then they disregard all laws and can also pass judgments, is what is called as kangaroo courts. So remember, kangaroo courts have no sanction of law. They do not upkeep with the principles of law and justice, and they completely disregard all the principles of justice. The phrase kangaroo court originated in the 19th century America to describe any illegitimate court proceedings. So those court proceedings which are not given sanction by the law is what is called as the kangaroo court. So the term kangaroo court comes from the image of all these judges hopping from place to place, guided less by the concern of justice, but all they want is to wrap up all the cases of trial as soon as possible. Because they do not have the legal principles, because they do not have the law that defines how their operations has to be, and they keep vacillating, they keep moving with their decisions, is why it is called as kangaroo courts. So whenever we speak about kangaroo courts, they are inferior, informal and inequitable. What do we mean by it? When we speak about inferior, we have the traditional judicial system. The judicial system has a particular principle. These principles will also have to be followed by the court of law. You also have the procedures as well. You also have the natural justice principles as well. But when it comes to these kangaroo courts, all of these are not present. So these courts are considered to be structurally subordinate to the traditional courts and are likely to generate substandard adjudicative outcomes. Then the next important character happens to be informal. The informal nature of the kangaroo courts refers to the fact that they operate unofficially. They are not given permission by the state. They are not given permission by the laws. They are not given permission by the operating system of that particular country, but instead they are organized unofficially and they do not have the stamp of law as well, or it might also be casual as well. Such is what is called as informal. So when it comes to the judiciary, they are formal, but when it comes to the kangaroo courts, they are informal. And finally, kangaroo courts are also inequitable, which basically means that they do not follow the procedures, they do not give importance to the natural law principles, and some of the decisions that they give is unfair as well, which is why when we speak about kangaroo courts, they are inferior, informal as well as inequitable. How does this work? When we speak about the process, we have the elected representatives who become the members of the parliament. So what exactly happens? We elect them. So it is the people who give the power to the representatives to draft the laws. When it comes to the judiciary, we also have the constitution as well. The constitution gives a selection method as well, and this defines how the judge has to be selected, who has to appointment, so on and so forth. So on one side, what we have is the elected representatives. On the other side, on the basis of merit, we also have the judges who are selected. But when it comes to the kangaroo courts, they are not elected, they are not even selected as well. They are the people who on the basis of a certain hierarchy are selected as the people who would be able to pass on the judgments. These people, there is no election procedure, there is no selection procedure, but because they represent a specific caste, because they are rich in that particular region, they are accorded this role to pass judgments with respect to a certain issue. So when we speak about the process, the jury members in all these areas are neither elected nor part of the democratic system like the official judges. When we speak about the principles of natural justice, what happens? There are two important principles. One, is that every man has a right to be heard before he is condemned. Another is no one can be a judge in his own court. But when it comes to these courts, the principle of natural justice are not taken into picture. Some of the cases, the other party is not even heard as well. And at the same time, these are the people who may also be involved in that particular issue, and they also become the judges in their own case as well. So the kangaroo court is where they are not elected, they are not selected, but because they have an hierarchy in that particular society, they go on to adjudicate and pass a particular judgment. Let's take some of the examples. In this particular case, a 35-year-old man was allegedly burnt alive at Borlong village in Nagaur district of central Assam after a kangaroo court adjudged him guilty of murdering a 22-year-old woman. So there was no adjudication process, there was no trial as well, evidence was not submitted, the other person should have also been heard as well. Without even hearing all these cases, just because there is an assumption that this person may have killed, they go about giving the judgment, and ultimately this person is burnt alive. Ideally, what should have happened? Even if he's committed a murder, there has to be a trial, there has to be an investigation, there will be a court of law where both the parties engage in evidence making, evidence giving as well. All of these is taken into picture, and ultimately the court delivers the judgment. But in this case, nothing happened, and this man was burnt alive. Let's take another example. There was an incident in Sabalpur village in West Bengal's Birbhum district. What exactly happened? In this particular incident, a 20-year-old woman was gang raped by a dozen men as punishment for the alleged immoral conduct. The order was made by a kangaroo court, and this was led by a village headman, which meant what the judgment passed was from a kangaroo court. Let's take another example. 8 Nagaland women had chopped off another woman's hair, stripped and paraded her naked on the road in the year 2018 after a kangaroo court subscribing to tribal customary laws found her guilty of having an extramarital affair. So these kangaroo courts do not follow the rule of law. They do not have anything to do with law. They do not follow the principles of natural justice. They pass adjudicative measures. They pass judgments, and this violates some of the very natural justice principles. These kangaroo courts continue to thrive in most of the rural areas in the North India. They act like the Kap Panchayats, where these Kap Panchayats are also extrajudicial, and they are the ones which are also acting as kangaroo courts. And in the southern part as well, there are caste-based gatherings of village elders in the southern part. All this means that the judgments that are passed by these kangaroo courts do not have the stamp of law, but they are snatching away the life of the people, violating Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. And as a result, there are multiple concerns because of these kangaroo courts, that they are headed by ill-informed men, they have medieval social attitudes, they have patriarchal prejudices. As a result, their conduct is bad, and they give punishments like social ostracization, payment of arbitrary fines, and in most of the cases, they have no sanction of law as well. This means it is the people who become the major sufferers. As a result, in the year 2011, the Supreme Court wanted illegal Kap Panchayats that encourage honor killings or other institutional atrocities to be stamped out ruthlessly, because these Kap Panchayats were acting as the kangaroo courts. In fact, we also have the Delhi High Court as well. The Delhi High Court said that kangaroo courts and their dictates are the biggest threats to the Indian democracy. Such have been the harsh words used by the Indian judiciary against the kangaroo courts. So what is the way forward? As of now, we do have the legal process, we do have the security measures, we do have the stringent laws as well, but these are not enough. So what we require is media's efforts. So media should play a critical and an important role. They should show what is happening in India. They should showcase some of the instances of the judgments passed by these kangaroo courts, and ultimately create awareness in the society about such heinous crimes. We should also ensure that more literacy and education is provided to the people, so that they do not go to these Kap Panchayats or any of these Panchayats or the kangaroo courts. Instead, they go to the court of law and ultimately seek justice from these court of law. Social attitudes also need to change as well, reflecting liberal and human values, and the if the country is to ensure general equality, protection of women, or any other things, these kangaroo courts should be completely abolished, and all we require is the judicial system to look into it, the bureaucracy to look into it, the government to look into it, and we require a multi-stakeholder approach to bring an end to these kangaroo courts is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about section 69A of the IT Act. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. First, let's look into the bare act of 69A of the IT Act. What does it say? It says the power to issue directions for blocking for public access of any information through any computer source where the central government or any of its officers specially authorized by it in this behalf is satisfied that it is necessary or expedient to do so in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, defense of India, security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states or public order, or for preventing incitement to the commission of any cognizable offence relating to the above, it may subject to the provisions of subsection 2 for the reasons to be recorded in writing by order direct any agency of the government or intermediary to block for access by the public or cause to be blocked for access by the public any information generated, transmitted, received, stored or hosted in any computer source. The intermediary who fails to comply with the direction issued under subsection 1 shall be punished with an imprisonment for a term which may extend to 7 years and shall also be liable to fine as well. So this clearly points out what is section 69A of the IT Act. Let me simplify this process for you. Let's say we have an intermediary. Who is an intermediary? The Facebook happens to be an intermediary. Twitter happens to be an intermediary. So what exactly happens? It is speaking about a computer source. Let's say there is an individual or there is an organization or a political party. These political parties or an individual or an organization are present on the Twitter. They do have their Twitter handles as well. These people propagate a lot of information as well. But what if the information given by this individual or an organization or an NGO or a political party is breaking the tranquility in the society? It is creating a law and order problem issue. So generally, if you consider the historical picture, it was in the form of newspaper, magazine, so on and so forth. But now what we have is the social media. At the click of the mouse, at the click of that particular person's mobile, they would be able to circulate information from one point to the another. So it will be able to spread immediately throughout the world as well. But if that information is going to disturb the sovereign country's relationship with another country, or it is going to harm India's relationship with another country, or it can disturb public order, what should the government do? The government should be able to regulate it. So the government in this particular case will request Facebook, it will also request Twitter, or it will make a call to YouTube as well, asking them to delete this data that is posted on their social media platform. Let's say there is an individual, he has posted something which can disturb the religious content, which can harm the religious feelings, sentiments of the people. The government of India or its officials or its authorities will immediately send a notification to Twitter to block this person from commenting anything on Twitter, or at the same time they can also ask Twitter to delete this tweet that is made by that particular person. So this entire section is about reasonable restrictions to the freedom of speech and expression. We know for the fact that Article 19 is not absolute. Reasonable restrictions can be imposed as well, and Article 19 is about freedom of speech and expression. Just because I want to say something, just because you want to say something, you cannot do so, because there are reasonable restrictions that are imposed under Article 19. Similarly, if you are putting something on an online platform, this also has reasonable restrictions. Now, the government of India makes a request to the Twitter, but Twitter does not listen to the government of India. Instead, it continues to hold on to that particular tweet, and it continues to allow that particular person to also post future notifications as well. In that case, if the government of India realizes that despite saying Twitter to delete it, it has not deleted, block him has not blocked him, in that case, it can also impose imprisonment for a term which may extend to 7 years, and they can also impose fine as well. So this entire issue, the article currently goes on to say is that as of now, according to Twitter, we have the government of India which are issuing some of the orders to Twitter to block few tweets and also individuals as well. But according to Twitter, this is arbitrary. There are no standard templates that are formed, and as a result, people's freedom of expression is getting violated, says Twitter. So what does it do? It goes to the Karnataka High Court, makes a petition to the Karnataka High Court, and says that this should not be the way how the government of India should conduct its activities, says Twitter. So basically, Twitter has initiated legal action against the government communication, ordering it to take down certain content posted on its site. Why has the Twitter filed the lawsuit? That is because Twitter has claimed that many of the blocking orders are procedurally and substantively deficient under Section 69A of the IT Act. What does it mean? It means that whenever the government is making some notification or passing an order, what it should do is give prior notice. But in this particular case, prior notice is not given to an individual. That's the first major problem. Added to it, MeitY has failed to demonstrate how some of its content that it is being posted on the social media is violating public order. When you're giving us the reasons, give us the reasons. How is it violating the public order? How is it violating the sovereignty of the country? How is it violating the friendly relations? Give us this order. Show us how this is violating all these aspects. You're not able to show us, and as a result, Twitter says that it procedurally and substantively is deficient under Section 69A of the IT Act. In several cases, Twitter has claimed that the basis on which multiple accounts and posts have been flagged by the ministry are either overbroad and arbitrary or disproportionate. So the government has allegedly not shown why restrictions were necessary in the interest of public order or for any other reasons. In fact, Twitter also goes on to say whenever the government has given orders to Twitter to block certain tweets, is it only for that particular tweet or this individual should be blocked in the near future? This is again not given by the government of India, and what is the criteria that is drawn by the government of India is yet not given as well. That is where the whole contention is, and that is why we have Twitter which has gone against the government of India and has filed a case in the Karnataka High Court. The IT Ministry had also written to Twitter asking it to comply with its order by July 4 or lose its safe harbor protection under the intermediary rules. Now the question is, what is this safe harbor protection? When we speak about intermediaries, who are these intermediaries? Let's say for example the Twitter. What will happen? There is one person A. This person A is posting some information on Twitter, and this is being read by multiple other people. So whenever this individual A has to post something on Twitter, it is this person A's viewpoint. So even if he is posting something, Twitter is nowhere responsible for this action. If this person is provoking a certain section of the people, Twitter has nothing to do with it. Even if the government has to file a case, it will only file a case on this individual A and not on Twitter. That is what is called as safe harbor protection. So in case something goes wrong, every liability will fall on this individual A and not on Twitter, which is called as the safe harbor protection. But what has the government of India now said? It says that if you are not complying by your orders, the safe harbor protection will be removed, and because you are not complying by the orders of the government of India, it also means that you are indirectly supporting this very cause. This ultimately means the safe harbor provision will be completely removed and you will also be culpable, says the government of India. Added to this law, what we have is the rules as well. The procedure for executing the provisions of the Act are enlisted in the Information Technology Procedure and Safeguards for Blocking for Access of Information by Public Rules of 2009. It entails that a government designated officer along with an examination committee assess the content in question within 48 hours of receiving the takedown request. It must enable an opportunity to the author or the originator of the content to provide clarifications, and some of the internet advocacy groups have also been particularly critical of Rule 16 that suggests information confidentiality. So what does this mean? If the information or the order is given by the government to that particular organization, this information has to be confidential, should not be shared by Twitter, and as a result, the other person is not heard. Natural justice principle gets violated, and it is not transparent as well. How is the government held accountable? These are some of the concerns that are associated with Section 69A of the IT Act. As a result, they have gone to the Karnataka High Court and have requested the Karnataka High Court to issue clarity about this particular section, because according to them, this has been used very vaguely, it has been used arbitrarily, information is not given by the government of India as to why they have to restrict that particular individual. What are the reasons why that individual has to be stopped? Because there are multiple political parties, there are individuals who are making statements, and this is in reference to Article 19, which is freedom of speech, and if Twitter happens to restrict them, it is violating their freedom of speech, says Twitter to the Karnataka High Court. If you look into the Supreme Court judgment, the Supreme Court's ruling in the Superintendent Central Prison, Fatehgaon versus Ram Manohar Lohia, had held restrictions made in public interest must possess reasonable connection to the objective being achieved. They need to be set aside should the correlation is far-fetched, hypothetical, or too remote, in other words, bearing no proximity to public order. Only if it is right, only if there are evidences that this may harm the public order, only then you can go ahead with blocking the information. But if it is not, you do not have to block the information. But in this particular case, time after time, Government of India is asking Twitter to block the content which need not be said, says the Superintendent Central Prison Fatehgaon versus Ram Manohar Lohia. One of the prime reasons why the Supreme Court had upheld the constitutionality of Section 69A in Shreyas Singhal versus Union of India was its adherence to according a hearing to the author of the content as well as the intermediary. But what is the major concern? We have Rule 16 under the Information Technology Rules of 2009. It also asks for the confidentiality as well. So the other party is not taken into confidence, and this basically means it is violating the transparency principle as well. All of this will have to be taken into picture, is what the Twitter says to the Karnataka High Court. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, what ails the current approach to Ayurveda? The article here is making a critical analysis of the Ayurveda principles. When we speak about Ayurveda, what is Ayur? Ayur stands for the life energy, the vital energy, and Veda stands for science. So this basically is life science. That is what is Ayurveda. So the key principle of Ayurveda is basically about the balance. So there is a balance in your body. If there is imbalance, it creates dosha, and this is leading to the diseases in a human body. So most of the diseases and treatments are derived from the herbs, and when it comes to the universe, what we have is Vayu, Jal, Agni, Prithvi, and Akash, and all these five elements that are present in the universe are also present in human bodies as doshas, which are called as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. This has to be in a balance in the human body, and if there is imbalance in the human body, this can create problems and diseases to the human beings. If the Vata basically stands for elements of space and air. It basically translates to the wind or the air, and those are the things that are associated with Vata. If everything is in balance, he'll be inspired, there'll be emotional balance, clear mind, enthusiasm, good completion, good digestion, and fertility. But if it is not, it can lead to imbalance, creating multiple diseases. So those who practice Ayurveda believe that this happens to be the most powerful of all the three doshas. It controls every basic body functions, like how the cells divide as well. It controls the mind, breathing, body flow, heart function, ability to get rid of waste through the intestine, and this is important dosha, which is called as Vata. Then we have Pitta, which speaks about good digestion, strong heart, motivation, good eyesight, and sweating. And in case there is any issue with respect to the fire and the water component, we will have all these issues like indigestion, addictions, anger, liver problems, so on and so forth. So the things that can disrupt the Pitta happens to be eating sour food, eating spicy food, and spending too much time in the sun. This can lead to pitta imbalance. Finally, what we have is kapha, which derives from the elements of earth and water. This basically speaks about strength, immune response, lymphatic movement, protecting brain, fluid joints and movement, and in case there is an imbalance, it can lead to obesity, asthma, lethargy, slow digestion, so on and so forth. These are the principles on which the Ayurveda is based upon. But what does this article say? This article says that in the past, India has cherished the values of the Ayurvedic health system. It has also been able to cure multiple diseases as well, and it continues to cure multiple diseases. However, if you consider the modern medicine is based on the principle of clinical trials. So going forward, if Ayurveda has to sustain itself, it has to bridge the differences that are existing between the allopathic or the modern medicine and Ayurveda. It has to conduct research, it has to conduct clinical trials, it has to show on the research papers, it has to show it by evidence. If it does not do so, it will be problematic for Ayurveda, says this article. So Ayurveda's ancient treatises, for obvious reasons, cannot be expected to retain relevance in their entirety. They contain useful portions alongside with obsolete ones. So this goes on to say that yes, when we consider Ayurveda as a medical domain, it has been able to give us multiple viewpoints. It is also able to solve multiple diseases as well. But at the same time, there are also issues as well. These issues will have to be sorted out. Everything that is given in Ayurveda is not absolute. This also has to be verified, and what we require is evidences and experiments. If we can prove it via the law, if we can prove it via the evidence, if we can prove it via the research, it can continue to do so. But for that to continue, what we require is the evidence. One of the benefits of the physical experience and Ayurveda classic notes is a sense of ease, improved fitness, easy digestion, ideal body weight, and handsomeness of bodily features are the benefits that would accrue from regular exercise. So it speaks about yoga. Yoga is an aspect of Ayurveda. So what has been said 1500 years will also hold good even right now as well. So this article currently goes on to say that because yoga has been scientifically proved, because you continue to do meditation, yoga, pranayam, so on and so forth, you control your body. There is flexibility included. So what was right 1500 years ago may also be right even now as well, because it is scientifically validated. Similarly, if there are some herbs and these herbs are curing some diseases, this has to be scientifically validated, says the author. But the major concern the author speaks about that has worked against Ayurveda is the neglect of research in the present situation. So the discovery of newer drugs when it comes to allopathy or the modern medicine is because lot of money has been put into it, and at the same time there are pharmacies that coming up as well. The pharmaceutical industries have also tied up with the state. The state also testifies the clinical trial process as well. Similar thing should also happen to Ayurveda as well. So there has been a robust nexus between the industry and academia. There is huge funding that goes when it comes to the modern medicine. Similarly, what we require is the same funding to be allocated to Ayurveda, research with the academia in place, scientific rationale behind it, and if it is proved by the clinical trials, there is no stopping Ayurveda, says this article. So what is the way forward? The Ministry of Ayush must wake up and take cognizance of all these issues. The Ministry of Ayurveda should conduct innovative clinical drug trials to evaluate safe and effective use of selected and standardized Ayurvedic medicines. We need to have a well designed rigorous scientific research on the medicines, and at the same time what we require is evidence based Ayurveda, which is a blend of modern science, rigorous trial methods, and observational studies. If we are able to include the scientific rationale into Ayurveda, Ayurveda will continue to hold and cure the disease. But if it is not so, it should be rooted out. Not everything may be absolutely right. If it does not have any scientific rationale, that should be rooted out, because if it is not rooted out, it is the people who are going to suffer. So the author goes on to say Ayurveda is an ancient practice of life which has a rich history. It also has its basic principles of its own, but if it has to sustain with the modern medicine, it has to prove its scientific rationale with the experimentation, observation, and evidence is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the road to productivity. What are we speaking about? We are speaking about the infrastructure. What are we speaking about? We are speaking about cities where people commute from source to the destination, and as they travel from the source to the destination, if they are spending too much time in the traffic, this will lead to a lot of stress. This will also mean the outcome of the people working in the offices will also reduce over a period of time. So what we have to make sure is increase the infrastructural support and reduce the travel time between the source to the destination is what is this article all about. So this article currently goes on to say that if we look into the statistics as of now, most of the cities are suffering. Why? Because if a person has to travel from one point to another, he has to commute from the source to the destination, from his home to the office. It takes a lot of time, and as a result, the efficiency of the employee working for the employer will drop, says this article. There is no doubt that the commute time for the labor force to the workplace plays a very important role in determining their productivity in cities. The travel time to work was one of the slowest in our cities in 2016, Bengaluru being the slowest at 22 km per hour, Delhi at 25 km per hour, and Chennai at the highest at 33 km per hour. And if you travel in any of these cities, you will also realize that you're wasting a lot of time as well. And this also hurts your health as well, because you're inhaling lot of polluted gases, and at the same time, because of the delay in the traffic, the productivity is also lost. So this article also says that there are a lot of potholes in all these cities, and because of these potholes that are existing in the cities, this also leads to further delay, and it can also cause accidents to the people who are traveling. Added to it, the article currently goes on to say the longer the time to commute in a city, the smaller is its effective labor market, and vice versa. So in order to ensure that the productivity of these people increase over a period of time, what you have to reduce is the travel distance, for which what you have to make sure is maximum infrastructural support from the respective state governments. The author also takes into example one of the study. A study found that within a 45-minute commute on public transit, only 66,427 jobs were accessible in the Phoenix metropolitan area in the US, compared to the nearly 202,724 jobs which are accessible in Philadelphia metropolitan area within the same commute time. Therefore, there is no doubt that Philadelphia's effective labor market is bigger than its counterpart in Phoenix. This is reflected in the higher per capita income of $22,874 in Philadelphia compared to $21,907 in Phoenix in 2010. So this basically means if you are able to cut down the time, more will be the productivity of the employees in the offices. So the article currently goes on to say, if we speak about the urban local bodies, they should not assume that infrastructural support system or the money infused for the roads and infrastructure is bad, but instead it should be treated as the investment. The more the investment they make in order to develop the roads, the better they will get the returns, says this article. So basically this article goes on to say that we have to improvise on the infrastructural support, we have to invest on the roads as well, and at the same time, when we invest on the roads, this will also mitigate the impact of the health as well. People will not suffer from air pollution, and at the same time, you will also have more children who would also be able to educate themselves, they'll be able to reach themselves, and there'll be less accidents as well. So this will ultimately lead to significant reductions in travel time, and this will have a greater impact to the country, says this article. So investing in roads not only reduces travel time but also enlarges effective labor markets of cities and their economic output, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Explain with relevant examples the meaning of kangaroo coach. Section 69A of the IT Act 2000, which allows the center to block public access to an intermediary, requires reforms. Do you agree? Substantiate. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.